We got some good news and some bad news on the Miami Hurricanes injury front today.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Postgame on the Miami Hurricanes radio network. And thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen or your second listen. So much stuff has come out since our morning episode today. I had to come back for more. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So after our morning episode, I took a look at the point spread for Miami versus USF at Miami. And then I looked at it again a couple of hours later, and it's interesting the way that line is moving and what that means for Miami and for the game this weekend. One of Miami's safeties has left the team. It turns out he was dismissed from the team. We'll talk about that, but let's start with the significant injury updates that came out, good and bad, courtesy of Cristobal today, who spoke to the media in the afternoon. You know, when somebody asks you, do you want the good news first or the bad news first? You always say you want the bad first, right? And the bad is that true freshman defensive end Hayden Low, you know, we talked about this morning. We had the update that he is injured. We just didn't know how severe it was. Cristobal clarified this afternoon that Low is going to be out for the year. So, you know, obviously for him, this is his first year out of high school. So he's going to redshirt. He's going to rehab. And, you know, we've had Hayden Low on the show before, so you guys know what a competitor he is and just what a great guy he is. And I know he's going to attack that rehab, and he's going to have, you know, 4 years, if he uses all 4 years in college starting next season, to show us the sort of dominance in games that he showed at times in practice. So obviously I'm sad and I feel terrible for Hayden, because anytime you suffer a significant injury, and I don't have the exact details on what the injury is, but you know, according to Cristobal, it's something he suffered a few weeks ago. So it happened before the season started. You know, he didn't play at all against Notre Dame or against Bethune-Cookman this past week. He suffered an injury before the end of training camp, and I think they thought he might be able to come back from it, but he ended up having surgery. So Hayden Low is going to be out for the year. It's unfortunate we're not going to get to see him blossom as a true freshman. And, you know, even though, and thankfully, Miami's edge rusher rotation is super, super deep. And we're seeing the way Markeith Lightfoot in his second year is stepping up. We're seeing some Malik Bryant, and I think he's really someone who can step up depth for Miami. You know, maybe we'll see some more Booker Pickett Jr. and some Cole McConaughey, and obviously, you know, your top two guys dominating at that position are Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor. And, you know, so let's shift over to the positive injury news. And yeah, part of that does relate to defensive end and the defensive line, because Armando Blunt, who did not play against Bethune-Cookman, he did play and had some good snaps against Notre Dame, but Armando Blunt didn't play. I guess he had a minor injury against Bethune-Cookman, and Cristobal says Blunt is expected back this week. A couple of others expected back this week. No surprise on this next one, because coming out of the Bethune game, even though Jordan Lyle did not play in that game at running back, we saw all four of the other running backs, Mark Fletcher and Marty Brown, at the top of the rotation. We saw Chris Wheatley-Humphrey, and we saw Gerard Pringle, the true freshman, score a 30-yard touchdown. You saw his explosion in that game. But yeah, the one guy that we didn't see was Jordan Lyle. Got a little bit banged up in the Notre Dame game, and Lyle was held out for precautionary reasons of the Bethune game, because, you know, you didn't really need him in that game. You're going to need him this week and moving forward. So Jordan Lyle, they held him out of the Bethune game, but he's going to be back. And then another player that was held out of the Bethune game is Jojo Trader. And I know when people see or hear about him being banged up, Cristobal said it after the Bethune game that, you know, Trader was banged up and he was a no-go. Those were Cristobal's words. You know, Jojo's had, you know, some bad luck, you know, with injuries the last couple of years. So fans get concerned about it. But, I had heard earlier today, and courtesy of my friend Cass Clayton, who I think is going to come on the show later this week, so that's going to be really fun. She told me and she told us that Jojo's going to be okay, that he's fine, and Mario Cristobal confirmed that today. So Jojo Trader is going to play, and I'm excited to see him get more involved in the offense because he didn't play a whole lot against Notre Dame, didn't record a catch in that game, was targeted a couple of times, probably interfered with at least once, if we're being real here, that was not called. But Jojo, again, he is someone who connected a lot with Miami's quarterbacks in practice, and I think was primed for, and still I think can have a breakout season this year. And if you can see him develop that sort of on-field chemistry that Carson Beck already has with the likes of Malachi Toney, true freshman, who's just been dominating, leads Miami in receiving yards each of the first 2 games, and CJ Daniels, who has not only caught 3 touchdowns already, and all of them were difficult contested catches. One of those was that insane one-handed grab that was all over SportsCenter. I think I got to double check this stat, I guess, but I'm going to roll with it. I think CJ Daniels has caught every target that he's had so far this season. Like every pass that has been thrown to him, he has caught. So that's what you're getting from CJ Daniels. But Jojo Trader, Jordan Lyle, Armando Blunt, all expected to be back this week. And unfortunately, Miami is going to lose Hayden Low for the year. And, I see some USF fans, talking about, oh, look at that. They just lost Hayden Low for the year. And listen, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but I don't think they realize that Low didn't play in either of the first 2 games. So it's not as if Miami is going to have less people available than they had against Notre Dame. But to Hayden Low, get well soon. And I cannot wait to watch you next year because this dude is exciting in practice. And when I get to see him in Canes game days on Saturdays in the future, it's going to be a great thing for the future of Miami's pass rush. Other significant news today, one of Miami's safeties is no longer on the team. We will tell you why when we come back. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Hey, when the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-life inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. You need parts for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. Their Trademaster perks, like priority shipping and dedicated support, make the whole process smoother. So join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Just visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. We're also brought to you by Game Time. It's the only ticket app that I use, and you're going to get the best deals on Miami versus USF tickets for this Saturday, 4:30 p.m. I mean, don't watch the game on the CW. Come out to Hard Rock Stadium and bring that electric juice to Hard Rock this Saturday. Guys, there's nothing like Game Time, and you avoid all of that nonsense like endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. You don't get that, and that's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. Folks, honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first and your second listen today. All right, so news started to trickle out this afternoon. I think some people had suspected that this was going to happen. I'm not as much of an internet sleuth as some of you are, so I guess people who had noticed that safety Markeith Williams hadn't gotten a snap in either of the first 2 games. Some folks looked up his player bio on the Hurricanes website. I guess his player bio had already been removed this week. So people were, is he still on the team? And so then, a report came out in the early afternoon that Markeith was entering the transfer portal, which, I thought was interesting because it's like, you don't want to finish out the season. But then the real scoop came out, and I think our friend Peter Ariz from Canes Insight had it first. If I'm wrong, to credit him, let me know. It was the first place I saw it, so shout out to Pete. That Markeith Williams was actually dismissed from the team. Violations of team rules, which, it's important to uphold those team rules. I mean, we've had coaches in Miami in the past that didn't have, strict enforcement and were, too lenient or inconsistent on penalties for players who violate team rules. You only get so many strikes. And so I'm sorry to see Markeith go. And I hope that wherever he ends up, as obviously he's going to have some time in that transfer portal. Like, I don't know if he can, since he was dismissed from the team, I'm not sure if he can find a new team in season or probably after the season is over, but I hope he ends up hitting it big at his next spot, because any interaction that I've had with him was always positive, and I will definitely root for him. But he was dismissed from the team this week, and Miami, again, they hadn't used him yet, and thankfully you see a guy like Bryce Fitzgerald as a true freshman stepping up, practicing consistently, and made a big play, Fitzgerald, against Bethune-Cookman with that interception. And that wasn't a fluke. I mean, Fitzgerald has been practicing really well. I think the coaches are really high on him. Dylan Day is another safety that had passed Markeith on the depth chart. Day, in his second year, has really played well. Obviously, your top two safeties that have started both of your games so far, both transfers, Zechariah Poyser from Jacksonville State and Jacoby Thomas from Tennessee, who I've been really happy with so far. I think he's played really well. So that's four right there. Isaiah Taylor, who's also been practicing well and working really hard. Jason Taylor's son, who is a nice player. He's probably your fifth guy on the depth chart. And then, you always have, certain other defensive backs that are maybe capable of deputizing as safeties if necessary. And even a guy like Cameron Bobby Pruitt at outside linebacker, who I think has enough positional versatility that he can plug a hole there situationally or if needed. So I think Miami's going to be okay at safety. Like, it's not, the deepest of positions on the team, but based on the way a guy like Bryce Fitzgerald has stepped up and shown he is ready as a true freshman to take on extra responsibility, and a second-year guy like Dylan Day stepping up, I think they're in okay shape there. So, Markeith Williams, I don't want to speculate on exactly what the violations were, but he's no longer on the team, and I will absolutely wish him the best. So, I hadn't looked at the point spread for Miami versus USF until earlier today, and I want to put this out there again. I fully understand this can absolutely be a challenging game, and I give USF a lot of credit. They bullied Boise State in their opening game. They really adjusted well against Florida, and Alex Golish completely outcoached Billy Napier. Hopefully that doesn't happen this weekend. I think, I know people like to put Mario in this category. I think Mario's doing a hell of a job here, and I would take him over Billy Napier as my head coach 7 days a week and twice on Sundays. So I don't think that sort of thing's going to be going on this weekend. But I think USF can absolutely be a difficult game for Miami, and even the game that they won last year, 50-15 in Tampa, was a lot more difficult than the final score would indicate. But all this to say, before I checked the point spread, I'm usually somewhat good at guessing what these are going to look like. I was thinking it would be somewhere around Miami favored by 10.5, something like that. Then I checked the point spread earlier today, and I saw it at Miami favored by 16.5. And then a couple of hours later, I check again on the FanDuel Sportsbook, and Miami is now, at the time that I'm saying this, favored by 17.5 points. So the Hurricanes are getting a ton of respect. And I don't know what to do with that. I guess like on the positive end, it means the bettors and the handicappers really think Miami's a lot better than USF. Like they really feel that way. And maybe they felt like the Florida thing was a little fluky. But then on the flip side, I could understand if any USF fan would look at that number and say, gosh, are we getting disrespected based on what we've done our first 2 games, beating ranked opponents, one of them on the road in allegedly a really tough place to play, although I feel like the Swamp has lost some of that mystique during the Billy Napier era. But I was surprised to see that number at 17.5, and it moved a full point just today. So I wonder if it's going to keep maybe moving back and forth throughout the week. And I was watching my dude Jason on Rock Boys football earlier today, because he's already it's only God, he works hard. It's only Monday. He's already put out his game preview and prediction for that one. And he said something about USF versus Florida that I totally agree with, because I mentioned to you guys on our episode yesterday, I missed big chunks of that USF versus Florida game because it was right before Miami's game against Bethune-Cookman. I was preparing for the Miami game, so I missed some of the second half of that game. And I thought Rock Boys made a really good point that, like, Florida, despite the fact that they were having a lot of success running the football with the push from their offensive line, Billy Napier calling the plays there, like, inexplicably got way too cute in the second half and got away from the run way too much. That's a mistake Miami cannot afford to make, and I don't think Miami would make that mistake. And, this is to make the assumption that Miami's offensive line, who's got a big size advantage against USF's D-line, and Miami's O-line, I think, is maybe the very best in the entire country, that they're going to be able to win those individual matchups and get, some good continual push against USF. And I think Miami's running backs, from Mark Fletcher, from Jordan Lyle, who's going to be back this week, Marty Brown and company, are going to be able to get some yardage and keep moving the football. I highly doubt Shannon Dawson and Mario Cristobal would go away from the run if it's working the way that Billy Napier did. So that would be one thing that I wouldn't worry about. There are plenty of other challenges in this game. This is going to be the best of, like, the dual threat quarterbacks Miami has faced so far. CJ Carr ran a little bit. He did score a touchdown on a quarterback draw against us. And, the quarterbacks from Bethune-Cookman, they could run a little bit, but it's not the same level of football, where, Byron Brown is going to be a serious test and, like, a really good test to prepare you for Thomas Castellanos a few weeks later, who's going to run a ton. That's probably going to be, like, the best true running quarterback Miami is going to face this year, a dual threat quarterback. I want to be fair to him because he throws a little bit as well. But yeah, there are other challenges with that game. But in terms of committing to run the football, I would imagine Miami's going to do that. And again, you guys let me know. Are you bullish enough on Miami to not only have them win this game, but to win it by 18 or more points? If you're going to be betting Miami minus 17.5, let us know in the comments below. Or do you think USF is going to play well enough to at least cover the spread? And just so you guys know, always my policy on the Miami Hurricanes, I am way too superstitious to put money on them or against them. I stay away from it. I do not bet on games that involve my Canes, because I don't want to feel responsible for angering the football gods. And I also never want to be in a position where, I'm like angrier at the team because I lost money on them. So I stay away. But you guys let me know how you feel about that 17.5 point spread. So I want to take another quick look at the AP Top 25 and just what it means for Miami's schedule the rest of the year, for the teams Miami plays who are currently on that top 25. Interesting to note that this is a little bizarre. Notre Dame, who Miami beat week 1, they're 0-1 on the season. They had a bye week 2, and yet somehow they moved up in the rankings to number 8. You talk about privilege. The team hasn't won a game, and on their week off, they move up in the rankings. Now, I'm not going to complain about it, because you know what? It feels weird to say this out loud, because I historically do not like that program, but I kind of hope Notre Dame has a really good year, because it's going to help Miami's strength of schedule, and we can look back and say, hey, Miami beat a damn good football team week 1. So I'm not going to complain about Notre Dame being number 8 still, because it's good for Miami's strength of schedule. All right, so if you look at the teams that Miami faces this year that are ranked, you've got number 10, Florida State, who, looks so much better than we thought they would heading into the season. And that's a huge opportunity for Miami's strength of schedule, because that's, obviously if they were to play today, it's a top 10 matchup. I think there's a chance that it's top 7 or maybe even top 5, depending on how the pollsters view Florida State over the next couple of weeks, that could be a college game day in Tallahassee for that game type of day, and a big opportunity, obviously, for Florida State. We certainly don't want them winning it. An opportunity for Miami to get a massive signature rivalry win, and it would be a great entry into your college football playoff resume coming up later on in the season. Other ranked teams on the schedule, USF, number 18, who Miami faces this weekend. They're off to a Cinderella start to the year. Hopefully the other shoe is going to drop this Saturday, and Miami's going to take care of business, favored by 17.5 points. And that's it for the remainder of the year, because, Clemson is not on Miami's regular season schedule. You would only see them in the ACC championship game if both teams get there. Clemson ranked number 12 right now. Clemson does not look like the 12th best team in the country at the moment, I got to say. We all know that they lost at home to LSU to open up the season. That was at least a quality loss. But then if you watched Clemson on Saturday against Troy, just a really terrible effort. They were down 16-0 and looking pretty lifeless against an inferior opponent. And then Clemson just, they have so much more talent than Troy. They ended up scoring 27 unanswered points to win the game 27-16. But their offensive line didn't look good, hasn't looked good. Their defensive line to this point has not looked as good as advertised. And Cade Klubnik seems to have regressed to the 2023 version of himself, which was not nearly as good as last year. I'm not going to completely rule out Clemson having a good season, because there's been several times, including last year, where they start slow and they finish pretty strong. So I'm not completely writing them off, but there should be alarm bells sounding there right now, because they've just not looked nearly as sharp or motivated as they should be, especially coming off that loss to LSU. You don't play better against Troy. That was really weird. And, teams that could be ranked by the time Miami faces them, SMU just fell out of the top 25. They lost to Baylor in overtime. Miami doesn't play them till like mid-late November, so they could climb back into the top 25 if they go on a little streak. And Louisville, who Miami plays at home after their second bye week after Florida State, they could very well be in the top 25 if they keep winning, because they're like near the top of the other receiving votes category. So that's kind of what you have left in terms of top 25. And I'm all about the highest possible strength of schedule for Miami the rest of the way. Want to send a huge thank you and shout out to everyone for making Locked On Canes your first and your second listen today. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and hit the thumbs up button, the like button. If you're listening to the audio version, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. And we'll talk to you again next time on another episode. We'll have a Truth Teller Tuesday tomorrow on another Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.